on Grand Touring Concepts, we take you through the timing chain system of a Lada.
After our dismal performance on the dyno, we had reason to suspect that there's maybe something going on bad there. Whether it's the camshaft's not in line or something going on. So we ordered some parts.
They've arrived, and we're going to put them in for you. The first thing to do was to make some room to work. Sean and I accomplished this by pulling the hood out of the way, draining the radiator of its coolant, and getting it and the fan clear of the front of the engine. This would allow us clear access to all of the parts of the timing set. From the top side, Sean also pulled the air cleaner assembly, the carburetor, and the distributor. Next, the valve cover came off. This would allow us to figure out where our timing marks were and also check the relationship of the valves.
Upon disassembling this engine, the first thing we wanted to do was check the camshaft timing on this because we had very dismal performance on the dyno. We're kind of suspecting that the timing has been retarded either through the manufacturing tolerances or a stretch chain or something along them lines. And what we're finding is that's exactly the case. With all the pieces pulled off so that we can inspect and see the timing set, we turned the motor over slowly until we got our timing mark close on the top. Then we slowly spinned it and we stopped it when the little pinpoint here was lined up directly on this spike. That's when the camshaft is at 0, top dead center. And then down here on the timing cover, we have a set of marks. We have 3 marks on the cover and 1 on the crank. The big long mark here, that is 0, that is 5 degrees, and that there is 10 degrees. And right here is our mark of where it's at. So with our camshaft up at 0 on the top, we're seeing that the timing is 10 degrees before top dead center. Now your crankshaft spins twice for every time your cam spins, so also the amount of movement up here is half of what it would be down here. With that on 0, this is 10 degrees out. So if we were to rotate this to 0, that would mean that the camshaft is actually 5 degrees advanced and it's killing our horsepower and giving us nothing but torque, which is why we had torque so low but very dismal horsepower.
With the camshaft timing verified, it was now time to further tear down the front of the engine. Sean removed the lower crankshaft pulley and the timing cover to allow us access to the timing chain set. We removed the timing chain tensioner and the timing dampener. It was in okay condition, a little grooved. We would look at that in greater detail later. Next, it was time to pull the sprockets and the chains. With all of this stuff clear and out of the way, we're ready to start looking at our pieces and consider reassembly. I'm over at the workbench to demonstrate a very interesting characteristic of the Lada change-driven timing sets. You'll take a look, we have our old 2121 or Lada Niva cylinder head. Again, this came from our high mileage original engine that we took from that vehicle, which had not been properly maintained. This is the front of the cylinder head. Normally your camshaft sprocket rides here, and back here there's a little slipper plate. And I'll draw your attention to these grooves. This is where the timing chain has been allowed to run out of adjustment, where it actually will eat through the backing plate and then begin to groove the cylinder head. We call this chainsawing because it works like a chainsaw and actually damages the cylinder head in a rather permanent way. This indicates that anytime a timing set's been run out of adjustment for a long period, this occurs. It's a sign of neglect. So let's take a look at the IVAN2104, which is a low mileage 2104 engine, and see what we have found in this location. Under hood of IVAN2104, you can see these same telltale grooves. That means that this engine at one time was run in such a manner that the timing system was so out of adjustment, it was able to contact the cylinder head and grind it away. And this is very important to note because this is a very low mileage engine. Sean would purchase this engine at 16,000 kilometers and has only run it to 30,000 kilometers or so before this began to occur. Let's take a look at the other timing components that we removed from IVAN. Examining the timing chain from IVAN2104, we noticed that it was indeed stretched. On the top here, we have the old original chain, and on the bottom, we have a new replacement. So by stacking them side by side and running them out, we can find that there's almost a half a link additional on the old chain. That tells us it's stretched. Installing this new chain is going to be a very good benefit to restoring our original timing for the camshaft. This is the tensioner shoe out of IVAN2104. Again, it only has about 20,000 kilometers, and Sean was very diligent with his timing set adjustment and valve lash intervals. But look at it. It looks like it's in pretty good shape up close, but you'll notice, look at those grooves. Those grooves are wear. And this is rubber plastic. It's a hard compound that is being ground off by the chain and then deposited in the oil. There, it goes through the oil pump, through the oil filter, and some of it has to be getting to the bearings. This is something we don't like. We experienced this with our Niva, where we had a complete failure of one of these shoes, and all of the material and the metal ended up in the timing sump. The engine still ran okay, but it did a lot of irreparable damage. We've elected to replace it with this gear-driven piece. It's made from a nice block of billet steel, features a gear, which is double set, and a nice tight bearing that you can see is removable for servicing later on. We hope that this piece will keep any foreign material like this from going through our engine and causing further damage. The last piece to talk about is our smallest piece. It's just the dampener shoe. You can see it's made out of, again, metal with a plastic rubber top. And this is just to prevent the chain from being able to contact the cylinder head and cut those chainsaw grooves we were speaking about. So when things have gotten so bad that this shoe disintegrates, the chain is able to contact and cut away the cylinder head. Although this was not as worn as the dampener, it still has a groove cut in it, which is more material that we don't want in our engine. So for the sake of replacing everything with brand new parts, we've elected for a new one, which you see is completely identical, but it doesn't have any grooves in it. We've also elected to recycle the original crankshaft sprocket because it was in good condition and was clearly replaced when the timing set was done before 16,000 kilometers. Again, it's the same deal with the distributor drive gear. It's in good condition, so again, we're going to reuse it. On the top side, we have this indexable camshaft sprocket. This will allow us to fine dial in the cam to make sure that it is perfectly at zero where it needs to be. It will also allow us to advance or retard the cam if we want to change where the power peaks happen in the horsepower curve. You'll notice on the back side, it's simply a sectioned gear with screws and mounting plates. And then on the outside, this is where you get your adjustment. By loosening these, you're able to slip the outer piece compared to the camshaft hub, and that allows you to have your adjustment or correction as you need it. And finally, topping it all off, this is a convenience piece. This is an automatic timing chain slack adjuster, and these are commonly available anywhere. They're a really easy piece to install, 2 bolts, and you simply remove this pin and it will automatically take up tension throughout the wear of the system. Reassembly started by installing the timing dampener shoe. This would keep the timing chain from being able to contact the cylinder head and cause further damage on those grooves. It was simply fixed in with 2 bolts and easy to install. Next, the adjustable timing gear went in. It was affixed to the pulley using the locating studs and set into position in a neutral spot. That way we could advance or retard it to get our timing perfect. The distributor timing gear came in. This is the one that controls the distributor and the ignition timing in relation to the crankshaft and the camshaft. Before we went too much further, Sean wanted to take a brief pause and draw attention to a very individual characteristic of the Lada engine design.
This piece we're getting ready to install, in my opinion, is the most ingenious piece in this entire engine. The reason why I say that is, this little piece when installed will stop this engine from blowing itself up no matter how bad the timing chain system goes. Completely eats through the dampener, chainsaws through the cylinder head, eats that temperature shoe right apart, so there's nothing there. With all that stuff failed, still this thing will not jump its timing. They put this down and it threads in beside the lower crank sprocket so that no matter what, the chain cannot come out past the teeth and jump on the crank sprocket. The chains almost never jump up here on the timing chain. They always jump down the crank sprocket because it's a smaller sprocket, less teeth, less retention. So this little piece will stop this thing from ever blowing itself up, and it's the only thing that saved our Niva.
Back under hood, it was now time to install our double road timing chain adjuster. This simply slipped into place and was held in with the factory bolt. One parts incompatibility we ran into with this was we were unable to use the automatic timing adjuster, and we had to revert back to the manual one and required slight modification. We simply trimmed the end to shorten it up and reinstalled the original.
We have our timing set mostly together. Our next step in this process is to put a witness mark so we always know where the camshaft is. Currently we have the camshaft itself at top dead center. And with it at top dead center, the little hole in the bottom where our tab hooks into lines up directly with this red bolt, so we know that that red bolt will always be pointed down when the camshaft is at top dead center. So we're going to put a witness mark on here and a witness mark on the edge here so that we can always pull the valve cover off, and as the chain stretches, we can loosen the bolts and bring the camshaft back so it's always at top dead center. It's just good reference marks so that we can line things back up as the chain wears. And that's all we really need. It's just a little reference mark. It's not deep enough that it won't seal, and to make sure that we know the right bolt, as it were, we'll line up with that mark and good to go. There is a more high-tech way of doing it, but on this particular job, we don't need it.
Whenever reassembling your timing system, be sure to roll the engine over by hand and make sure that everything is perfectly in line and that there's no binding or any problems like that. If you just start it up with the starter, you could damage something if you've got something out of place. With everything correctly timed and in position, we're on the home stretch. It was just a matter of putting the front cover back on and reinstalling the carburetor, air cleaner, radiator, burping the coolant, and then checking our timing. With everything all back together, the timing set, and the air to fuel ratio running great, it was time to go for a road test and see if anything had improved.
Way cleaner on top end.
Yep. And that wraps up another successful job. We've taken you through the installation of a double roller timing adjuster, an adjustable camshaft sprocket, a fresh timing chain, and shown you how to retime the entire system to get your cam timing perfect.
The initial feeling of when we have it out on the street, the seat of the pants as it were, says that it makes more power. It revs cleanly, it doesn't die over, lay over. You can actually drive it pretty aggressive now. But we won't know until we actually put it on the dyno. Stay tuned for that.